Morning, glory, evening, grace, brethren, and such good to have all of it back along with us here with our Temperance Awakening, and I look forward to doing our next tobacco lecture here, talking about cancer and smoking. Of course, cancer, this is a very well-known, very well-known now thing that happens to people that smoke, particularly lung cancer, that now connected to cigarette smoking. I'm going to be looking at that here in this lecture. And as cancer cells multiply, they form damaging growths and can spread to other sites in the body. Cancer may be caused by a virus, radiation, sunlight, or chemicals. Cigarette smoke contains a number of cancer-causing chemicals. According to the Surgeon General, smoking is the leading cause of cancer deaths. And now we're going to look here in a little bit. Not just the leading cause of cancer deaths, but actually 1 out of every 5 deaths, 20% of deaths in the U.S., are related to cigarette smoking. DNA contains the blueprint for cells and all living things, also known as the genetic code. Genes carry traits from parents to children. That's pretty common knowledge now, like your height, how tall you are, the way you look, and even hair color and eye color and things. They all come from the mixture of genes contributed by parents. Genes also determine the interior structure of the body. They ensure that organs grow in the proper places and reach the correct size. As a person grows up, oncogenes in the nucleus of tissue cells control how often these cells divide. The plan is to create only enough tissue cells to replace those that die. Sometimes genes are damaged either by radiation or by a variety of chemicals called carcinogens. Oncogenes repair this damage, or if the damage can't be fixed, they program the cell to destruct. Sometimes, however, these mutated cells survive. They become abnormal, reproduce uncontrollably, and that's actually what causes cancer. Some oncogenes are more effective than others. For people with less effective oncogenes, cancer can be seen to run in their families. That is just in the genes, of some people. You probably know people like that where cancer just runs in the body, and that's the main reason why, because they have less effective oncogenes. When a cell becomes abnormal, it begins to reproduce. The cell doubles, and those 2 cells double. The resulting 4 cells double, and so on. After about 25 to 30 doublings, the clump of cancerous cells has become a mass approximately ½ an inch wide, containing billions of cells. And this growth is called a tumor, and it continues to get larger, invading and damaging healthy tissues around it. Cancers are named for the parts of the body where they originate, i.e. lung cancer, stomach cancer, brain cancer, etc. And, they damage, those very important organs. And this damage, can and often does become fatal. Cancer cells can also invade the blood vessels or the lymph system, part of the body's defenses against outside organisms. Cells can break off from the primary tumor and travel the body and lymph systems like highways, creating new tumors in other parts of the body. This is called metastasis. And actually, when I was writing the book that I'm currently writing right now about tobacco, I was studying this and actually, in connection with mouth cancer, which is something that people, who dip or chew, often can get. And mouth cancer actually has quicker metastasis than lung cancer does. See, it travels very, very quickly with mouth cancer. And if this is left untreated or treated too late, cancer may have spread to attack too many important organs, and then, patients, they face a painful, lingering death, as is the case with lots of people. And although medical writers had commented on the apparent connection between smoking and cancer for centuries, serious study of this link didn't begin until the late 1920s. Which is why, by the 1950s, people were like, hey, cigarette smoking is very dangerous. And the general public became aware of the connection of this in the 1950s as scientists began identifying cancer-causing chemicals and then discovering them in cigarette smoke. And it was really the 1989 Surgeon General's report that listed that they had found at least 43 carcinogens, i.e. cancer-causing chemicals, in cigarette smoke. And now just looking at the numbers here of some numbers here of cigarette smoke. As early as 1602, an English writer commented on the soot-related diseases of chimney sweeps and wondered if smoking tobacco had the same effects. Now this, of course, was before the time before cigarettes were really popular. Like talking they're smoking tobacco, that was, more so like cigars and pipe tobacco. But then over the next 200 years, some physicians noted that pipe smokers got cancer of the mouth and snuff takers got cancer of the nose. And then also in the 1700s, lung cancer was discovered. At that time was a very rare disease. In 1900, lung cancer was still rare. But as the century progressed, more and more people began developing this form of cancer. It grew 5 times faster than any other cancer between 1938 and 1948. And today, lung cancer is the #1 cancer in the world, especially like in third world countries. And it's the second most widespread cancer among American men and women, and the most deadly. Studying death statistics from 1995 to 1999, the CDC found that smoking killed over 440,000 people a year, roughly 1 out of every 5 deaths in the United States, as we said. Lung cancer and about a dozen other types of cancers accounted for over 150,000 of those deaths. The CDC concluded that cigarette smoking is the most important source of preventable illness and premature death in the world today. And so, quite the killer is cigarette smoking. And now looking at some of the risk here. Whenever young people first begin smoking, they're not thinking about the consequences of it. But there are very deadly consequences of using tobacco, any kind of tobacco. But particularly though with smokers in terms of life expectancy, male smokers lose about 13 years off of their lives, and females lose 14 and a half years. The threat of cancer plays a big part in shortening smokers' lives. Lung cancer is just an obvious danger. Smokers are 10 times more likely to develop lung cancer than non-smokers. But smokers have an equally large chance of developing a variety of other cancers that attack the mouth, tongue, nasal passages, gums, throat, voice box, and esophagus. The risk of bladder cancer is 2 to 3 times higher for smokers than for non-smokers, and smoking also doubles the risk of stomach cancers. In addition, smokers are also more likely to develop cancer in the kidney, pancreas, liver, cervix, colon, and rectum than non-smokers. See, smokers are also at a greater risk for some forms of leukemia. And so you see, the list just goes on and on and on. And the thing about it is research is still being done about the dangers of tobacco. And the more research that has been done, the more things, they're finding out just about how bad tobacco is for the health. And now looking lastly here, and we'll be through, this lecture is going to be maybe a little bit shorter than some of the other ones that we do, looking at chronic versus acute cancer. Now medical folks describe diseases as either chronic or acute. An acute disease is one that has a sudden onset and lasts a short time. The word chronic comes from the Greek word for time. A chronic disease recurs or progresses over time. A chronic cough, for example, is one that doesn't go away. Cancer is usually considered chronic, progressing through certain set stages over a period of time. A lump, a sore, or a cough that won't go away could be an early sign of cancer. And of course, the earlier that the cancer is detected, the sooner treatment can begin, so the greater chance that a person will have minimal damage and can survive the cancer. The usual treatment for cancer is surgery to remove the tumor. For those with lung cancer, for instance, physicians may remove a portion of the lung or the entire organ. In cases where the tumor has metastasized, chemotherapy or radiation therapy may be used. In chemotherapy, patients receive powerful drugs to destroy fast-growing cancer cells. In radiation therapy, beams of X-rays, electrons, or gamma rays are used to destroy cancerous cells, or radioactive materials are placed in or around the tumor. Both chemotherapy and radiation affect healthy cells as well. Patients may suffer pain, vomiting, weakness, and hair loss. Cure rates for some cancers can be as high as 9 cases out of 10. In other varieties, the cure rate is more like 1 out of 10. If all symptoms of cancer disappear and there is no evidence of cancer cells in the body, then the patient is said to be in remission. If the patient manages to survive for 5 years without the cancer returning, there's a good chance that he or she has been cured. Acute diseases appear suddenly with a severe intensity. In acute appendicitis, sudden pain warns the patient that the organ is inflamed and in danger of bursting. In acute cancer, the onset of the disease is sudden and it progresses rapidly. Prompt, aggressive treatment may be required if the patient is to survive. In either its chronic or acute forms, cancer draws away the patient's energy and causes considerable pain. Especially in the end stages, patients may receive heavy pain medication to help with all the pain that they're in. And so here, just actually scratching the surface of all the things that we're going to be looking at later on here. Like next, like we mentioned there, how lung cancer is the second most widespread disease in the U.S. because the biggest one is heart disease, or what's also known as cardiovascular, cardio being the term for heart in medical terminology, and that's actually what we're going to be looking at the next lecture. We're going to be looking at cardiovascular disease and how that is related to tobacco. And so got a lot more things that we're going to be looking at here, like just in the health aspect of smoking. Like I said, we're going to be looking at cardiovascular disease and smoking, and are going to be looking at smoking and medications, how that goes with taking other medications, and also the mouth and smoking, respiratory diseases and smoking, and then also in pregnancy and how smoking, that's actually going to be the last lecture that we look at, will be how smoking can affect the pregnancy of children. And so come on back and be with us. As we said, next class, next lecture, we're going to be looking at cardiovascular disease and smoking, and so we do look forward to that. And we'll see you then. Till the day breaks and the shadows flee away. I am Brother Cooper, and I love you, and I appreciate you.